Hello, it's Chris Basalis again. And in this tutorial, what I'd like to do is show you how I was using this tool called Scrivner to try to do some really easy qualitative research organizing prior to actually writing up research. And the reason that I'm recommending this is, again, I teach graduate students at a state university. And I'm trying to find cheap tools that they can use to do this. And this one, for example, it looks like it's $38 for students. And if they find this tutorial to be useful, then I would recommend it to them. If not, then I wouldn't do it. It does come with a really generous free trial, and you can read about that. And you probably could get a really good grasp of how to use it. But anyway, let me show you how I'm envisioning this could be used for writing up qualitative research. So, oh, that chair, man, I gotta oil this thing. Anyway, so look, this is the transcript that came out of Trent, and these were the codes, the very rudimentary codes that I put in there. And now the trick is to organize this, and of course, we could always go to our old friend Excel. That is a possibility, and I've done that before. I've done large-scale focus groups and collected a lot of interview data, and for part of it, I have just created sheets for each one of my codes, and done that, and moved them forward. Well, I guess you can just click here and listed them out and plot my quotes in, and then brought them into Word, and that was pretty easy. But it's not the best approach, especially if you find Excel to be really clunky. This might be worth the $35 or $38 or $39, whatever it was, which means that you're going to import this transcript into Scrivener, and I may show you that in a separate video, or in this one if I have time. If not, you can figure it out, or hopefully. And so here's what I did. After downloading the software, I'm still in the trial period. As I said, it's really quite generous. This is what I did. I imported Philip's interview into this document. Let me just move this out of the way so you can't see it for now. And what I'm doing with it is finding ways to organize it, and organizing it by, like, I guess, dominant categories and subordinate categories, or dominant themes and supporting themes, or whatever terminology you want to use. And that's exactly what I've done. For example, in Philip's interview, there's a section where he talks about his profile. So I would break that out, and I have a little bit here. He didn't say much. I could certainly add more demographic data in here, and I'm not going to do that, but I certainly could. I could just put in more demos, and of course save as I go. And in here, if we go to Philip's interview, what I'd like you to see is that one of the codes that came out from his transcript was about coping. And if you're don't trust me, there it is right there, coping and support, maybe something as a category. So if I go up to coding, for example, or coping rather, this is the quote that I pulled out. Now this is how I worked. Let me just show you on both of these screens so that you can see this. Because I have one of the dominant categories here being coping, what I'm doing is simply going through and copying out the relevant quotes and pasting them into this side under this tag. And then to do so, the way that I began, I certainly didn't have any of these things in here, is this. I went in and I just simply went up to, like, Philip's interview right here, and I added a category. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to type in new text, as if I were adding a new category in here. And I can have it belong under Philip's interview, but I don't. I want this to be a separate category. So let me even go ahead and rename that so it's a little clearer. This is going to be new code category. And so under this heading of new code category over here, let me just get back to Philip's story. Let's say that one of the new codes that I want to pull out is this one right here. There's some kind of shame that's required in order to get support if you happen to be homeless. So I'm going to copy that one out and paste it in here. I can even go ahead and rename my category now, because I could have started that from the beginning, of course. But I could call this shame. And maybe I could call it like the shame exchange. And by that I mean, in these interviews, it was like one has to exchange one's pride in order for some kind of support, and that's often very difficult for people to do. But the point is that I'm trying to group and categorize things under the category. Now, let's say that there is more to it than just this. What I want to do is I want to create another text, but this text I want to be subordinate to shame. So I've created it here, and I can right click on it, and then I want to move it. I want to move it to the right so that it is contained under the shame exchange. And so I could certainly under here term this maybe barriers to support. And as I think about it, maybe, and then I'm just clicking back so I always have the transcript in front of me. I can click forward into this and see shame exchange, and if I were to click on barriers to support, because this window's active, that's what would be over here. But as I think about this, I'm thinking that maybe barriers to support is actually a dominant category, and shame is a subordinate category or a subordinate theme, or however again you're terming this. So what I want to do is I want to move it up, or I want to move it to the left. And what I would like to do with this one is I want to move this down. So I'm going to move it down, and I'm going to move it to the left. And that way, I think let's see if I absolutely messed this up. It would appear that I did. I think that I should be able to just move it up here, and I can. Great. So what I want to do now is I want to move this to the left. Or to the right rather, excuse me. And so now barriers to the shame, let's say that this is going to be a dominant, primary theme, or however you wish to term it, whatever coding scheme you're using. I'm using the Busalis coding scheme here, which doesn't exist. But now I've got my dominant theme, and one of the dominant themes in here might be, the overcoming shame. And so I'll tab over. In order to get help, right? And so instead of a dominant theme, I'll call this barriers. And this would become my list of barriers, for example, on this slide. The shame exchange now then is one type of barrier to overcome in order to get some kind of support. It looks like I've already done that here, and so I can begin to move things underneath this category, I think, if that will actually work. And I believe that it does. So I would maybe keep this under here so that I've got this shame exchange, and then another idea was exchanging pride in order for support. And so what this will allow me to do then is to organize all of my codes into these categories. And then when I save this, or when I export it, and I export it to or save it, export it to Word, for example, which I can do. I can simply, to do that rather, I just go under File and then Export, and I want to export it to Files, and I want them all to be Word compatible, and then I can select everything that I do and do not want to export, and it's going to go into a folder, and what that folder will look like is this. And so I've got everything really neatly exchanged. I have my original transcript here, I have any of the subordinate categories and so forth organized here. Underneath Philip's interview, I've got his about story, and it's just a nice way, I think, to organize your qualitative research into, or your codes rather, into some kind of organization that is going to be easy for you to use. There are other tools out there, and when I've done large-scale studies that are qualitative in nature, I've tended to rely on MaxQDA, but it is cost prohibitive in my opinion. NVivo is another one that's also equally good. What I liked about MaxQDA is that it has a little app that goes along with it that you can use. But I think for basic qualitative research, this is not a bad tool. I may do an interview where I actually build this thing out from the beginning, but I thought I'd just provide an overview, and my students in my class have access to the practice files so they can download it and give it a shot if they want. But there you go.